it kind of, in a strange way, it kind of reminds me of Van Halen. If just bear with me, it makes sense. What's up, everybody? Rob here. So earlier today, the trailer for Robert Eggers' Werwulf came out. I'm going to be taking a look at it. It's a relatively short trailer, so I'm going to play through it, get my impressions on it. Then I'm going to go back through it, probably point out things in more detail what I saw and if I can add to it. And then I'm probably just going to go rambling on for a bit about werewolves and folklore and how it might play out in the movie. Other directions they could possibly go, and of course, probably going to be ranting about Hollywood and anything else associated with that, and just whatever else comes to mind. So, without any further ado, let's get down to it. Okay. Focus feature. Working title. Okay, that's a weird name for a company, but okay, sure. Okay, desaturated. Oh, creepy old people in the forest. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, follow the guy to the cave.
Darkness.
Hold it down.
Embrace it.
Okay, so they're going very ritualistic. Ooh, that is very creepy. Very creepy. Okay. It looks like a prophet. Like one of those crazy preacher.
I heard
of
a raving beast that ravished his country.
Keep my husband safe from his cursedness.
Oh, yeah. 28 days later vibes there for that. Oh, the anticipation. That's around the corner. Jump scare, jump scare, jump scare.
Thy soul is cursed. Thy kin accursed.
Oh, that's not good.
Thy world
Just there.
is cursed.
Okay, existential crisis here. Werewolf. Okay, there you go. Robert Eggers. Okay. Oh, Christmas. Very nice. Wholesome family entertainment. I'm sure it's going to be good. So that was a trip right there. Like anything Robert Eggers, it's going to be involving horror elements. It's going to be pretty trippy. So that's to be expected. Very desaturated color, which I don't like it because there's that trope of the medieval world being portrayed as dark and desaturated, like nobody has any kind of color at all. And I've ranted about this. Everybody else rants about this. I got these panels here. They're falling over. Yeah. So anyway, I got my cat here too. He's like touching things, and that's causing things to shift. Anyway, we've always ranted about the desaturation color, but it works with this because of the tone of it. It's not like desaturated color. Like there's no color because they want to show like how primitive and barbaric these people are. They're trying to set a specific tone, so I can kind of let it go, but that does bother me a bit here. But let's go through this again. Overall, I did like it. My curiosity is piqued. However, I'm not really a horror fan, to be perfectly honest with you. But this, historical stuff like this, I might take a look at this. I might take a look. Let's go through it again. There's some things I want to focus on here and talk about here. I'll be stopping along the way, so let's see how it goes. Willem Dafoe being creepy. Okay, guys hanging in the... There's a guy hanging before, we'll talk about that. But yeah, hanging people in the forest, totally legitimate. The hood here seems pretty medieval, If they wore hood, people wore hoods. Willem Dafoe being, Willem Dafoe with the pointy... Oh, that was it. Just get to a point. Oh, there we go. Okay, guy here having convulsions. Like, there's some sort of a crazy pagan ritual going on here. Is it historical? I don't know. Does it look evocative? Like, what's going on? Yeah, it definitely does. So let's, this is gonna be a trip. All right, moving forward a little bit. Okay. Thing about full moon, the werewolf being associated with the full moon. That's more of under the impression of that's more of an early modern thing. werewolves, like as we know them today, are mostly early modern into like post-Renaissance. During the Middle Ages, they had a very different view of things, and I'll break that down. But it was a lot less supernatural than you would think, actually. Okay, let me go back a bit before I go any further with that. There is no such thing as werewolf canon, and I use that term exceedingly loosely, but you know what I mean. Everywhere in Europe, and we're talking about Europe here, has their own take on it, and not just by nation, but really talking like one village may have one belief. You go like 10 miles down the road to another village, they'll have a completely different belief system about how werewolves existed, if they even existed at all, what they meant, what it did. So, and of course this evolved over the course of many, many centuries. So to say like, oh, werewolves are like this or werewolves are like that, well, no. And a lot of these things weren't recorded until much later, or they're kind of vague notions in something. Like they're not, like a lot of these are folk beliefs that we gotta anthropologists have to piece together. So to say like, this is a proper werewolf or an improper werewolf, not really. Shapeshifters of all kinds have existed since, dawn of time, and like pretty much every culture has some tale somewhere of humans that can shift into animals, animals that can shift into humans, and however you want to look at that. Yeah, so that's just commonplace. So mostly though. Well, we'll talk a little bit more when we get to it. Creepy old. Okay, now that creepy old guy here looks like the High Sparrow from Game of Thrones, and look, he's got it. He's got a sparrow. At what point in your life, some creepy old guy in the woods, child, come here? It's like, no, especially like don't do that ever, like ever. But especially like in the middle of the woods with nobody's. There's no way this tale ends with, and they lived happily ever after. Okay, underneath. Okay, yeah. A lot of things happen in caves. That's commonplace. Now this here, I saw this before. This is Golgotha. Or in the Catholic Church, it's Calvary. Cavalry is horse soldiers. This is Calvary. This is actually very common. This is not something like Robert Eggers trying to be edgy or something like this. This is actually a Christian imagery where you'd have Christ here on the top of Golgotha being crucified, and you'd have the skull and crossbones underneath. And this was Christ conquering death. This is a very common motif. So yeah, this is actually like legitimate Christian imagery right here. It's common in the Orthodox Church where I go. The Catholic Church, I'm not certain, but like no, this is not like Eggers being edgy or anything.
Do not dread the darkness.
I'm dreading the darkness. Okay, so now we got here these, darkness. We got things burning. Anything like this, you gotta have stuff burning. But you got these people here, they're doing what's obviously like a pagan ritual or some sort of like a heathen ritual, however you want to call it. Yeah, that did happen. In the middle, now, people in the Middle Ages were very Catholic. They were Christian, okay? Depends on pre-split, post-split. I believe this takes place in the 11th century or 12th century. I think this is 12th century England, so Catholic, but they had a lot of pagan beliefs, and a lot of these pagan beliefs were incorporated into Christianity. That said, there were still places that, they considered themselves Christians. They went to church on Sunday, they did all that stuff, and then they'd have like a pagan ritual because that's just what they always did. In England, they have, the Green Man during certain festivals, and the Prince of Fools. Like these are all harkening back to more distant pagan traditions. So having guys like here, would they be this brazen about it? Maybe in some really far hinterland area, possibly yes. I mean, this is obviously highly exaggerated, but like the idea that they're having like a pagan ritual in Catholic Europe, in Christian Europe, it's like that to an extent, yes. Exactly how much? Who can say? But yeah, this is actually like. Okay, let's go back here. There's a lot to break down here. I love this. There's so much to talk about here. Okay, wolf pelt. Person there on a wolf pelt. One of the ways to become a werewolf is to put on a wolf pelt. Now, this pelt would be cursed in some way. There's a lot of other ways you can do it. You can drink a potion. You can put on a magic enchanted belt, something like that. You would put on, but one of the big ones is most popular ways, was you would put on one of these pelts, and you would either become a werewolf. That was actually a bit later. Earlier on, you didn't actually like early in the Middle Ages, the belief of werewolves, it was you didn't actually transform into a werewolf. Actually, a lot of Christian thinkers, I think it was Saint Augustine. I'm not sure, but anyway, they said like, yeah, no, you can't physically change into a wolf. Just like witchcraft, everyone believes that during the Middle Ages, people were paranoid about witches. No, in the Middle Ages, people would like witches don't exist. Like, the idea was all power comes through God, and God would not give power to evil. But the devil and demons can tempt people, and they can give people delusions. So they would put these cursed items, like a cursed pelt or a cursed belt, like a garment of some kind, or drink a cursed potion or something like that, and it would give you delusions that you were a wolf, even though you weren't. Now, that was official church teaching. Now, in maybe some rural areas or some specific areas, official church teaching is one thing. People on the ground might have actually believed that you turned into a werewolf. That's why throughout this whole trailer, I didn't see anybody actually turning into a wolf. There's no actual creature there. But knowing Robert Eggers and his, his stickler for accuracy, it would not surprise me if, it was just like a guy, like believing he is a wolf when he's really not. Like it's a form of delusion, either cursed by Satan or possibly just a mental illness. They did believe in, yes, strangely enough, there were people, in the Middle Ages, they do believe in mental, like people are just crazy and had mental illness. Not as advanced as psychiatry as we have today, but, wasn't like, oh, this was a curse or this was, some phenomenon. It's like, no, this is something like his humors are unbalanced or something like that. So yeah, here, I think that's what they're tapping into with this. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to, at the risk of being demonetized, chick flying on a broom, that's definitely witchcraft. That's definitely an early modern thing. It might have been around earlier. I know it's definitely a thing in the early modern period, but yeah, we got, witches going on here. So they're tapping into the werewolves as a supernatural thing here. So, guy having a seizure, burning stuff. Yeah, there's I was talking about the desaturated color, but again, it fits the tone of what, like having bright colors in this wouldn't really work for the tone he's going for here.
I heard.
Willem Dafoe being awesome as always. I can't really see a sword here, but it looks like a decent sword from the era. This hat here has a name which I cannot remember because I'm not really a fashion guy, but it looks like this all looks pretty good. The stitching here, I'm being really, really, really pedantic. Stitching here seems a little bit big, like thick. It could be that way, but usually they usually can have very, very finer what's the word? Not threads, but whatever, finer stitching there. But yeah, overall this looks pretty good.
Of a raving beast.
Oh, minor detail. Married woman would have her hair covered. That is perfectly normal, and everything else here looks pretty good.
Beast. That Robert.
This looks like a trench. When I saw this, okay, this does look like a one-handed sword. It's very good. This all looks pretty good. The belt is a bit long here, I would say. But again, look, we're getting super, 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 super pedantic here. I could probably even be wrong on that because a lot of this is like personal choice and personal fashion and stuff like that. When I saw this, though, this looked like are they digging like a trench line? This reminded me of like, are they in Verdun? And they're putting beams on top. Like, is this going to be a trap? This might be a trap to capture the beast. Who knows?
This country.
Nosferatu. Haven't seen Nosferatu.
Give my husband to save.
All kinds of weird folk beliefs. What is that blood on his head? Is that what is she doing there? I don't know, but who knows?
From his cursedness.
People would be hanged. They'd be left to rot in the forest as a warning to others. This reminds me of 28 Days Later. I don't know what. Well, yeah, it does. But yes, people did. It's not just a creepy aesthetic. This was actually done. Yep. Feel the dead sheep. Feel the dead sheep. Yeah, that's always a disconcerting sight. This would be an economic disaster to have your entire... England's entire trade was basically wool. Like, their entire economy was basically wool. So this would be an absolutely devastating event to happen. Like, you're ruined for life. Like, that's it. It's over for you. Okay, creepiness. Jump scare. Woo.
is cursed.
Also really minor, if this is night, the animals would be definitely penned in somewhere. Sometimes they would actually live in the house for warmth. There's more possibly for winter things you can argue. Would they be wandering around this? Possibly. I just think it might be a bit odd. You'd want to keep them curled up so that you could they wouldn't wander off. But this is still very, very reasonable. I am being super nitpicky today. Blue. This is actually a very common color fabric. Could easily be dyed. Awesome. Okay. Okay. Look at these. These are like some devil's rejects. I have no idea what's going on here. I know some areas, you can't really get out that much, and the only person around is like your sister cousin. You know what I'm saying? And things get a little weird. It happens. I don't know if it ever got this bad though. Devil's rejects. No comment.
Is cursed.
Yeah, the idea that werewolf, being a werewolf, being a lycanthrope is a curse is definitely something that would have happened. They would have considered this to be a curse by God. It would have been a curse by put on you by Satan for your sins. And yes, it can be passed down through multiple generations. That is certainly within the realm of possibility. Your kin are cursed. A lot of times, though, it's self-inflicted. Like, I'm doing this for power. I'm doing this because I want to become a werewolf, and that's what happens. So, or you could either, be an innocent victim, or you could have, done it self-inflicted. Get done it deliberate. Very wholesome. Yes, very nice. There's wholesome family entertainment. There you go. So anyway, so that's it there. I just want to talk a little bit about this. Overall, I'm very impressed by this. The detail, there's not a lot of historical. I mean, it's a historical time thing, but there's not a lot for me to pick apart here. A lot of it is more anthropological, what's going on here, rather than like. Again, I can like nitpick the clothing, stuff like that, but there's really, it's not gonna be like a grand sweeping epic where I can like, talk about the weapons or the armor or anything like that. There was a spear. There's like, it's a spear. Awesome. But the thing is, knowing Robert Eggers, I'm sure he went to extreme detail to make sure everything was as correct as possible. All things considered. The reason for this, the reason why that impressed me is like, I think that he's like the anti-Christopher Nolan. Because if you know anything about like, if you know about what's going on in Hollywood at all, you have what's going on with the Odyssey and how that's just completely off the rails. I talked about that in a previous video. And just Hollywood in general, they don't care. Like, they have an idea of what the Middle Ages look like or this particular time in the past looked like. And, well, whatever. It's like vaguely medieval-esque, and they just throw it out there without any concern whatsoever. It could be something completely fantasy and made up. It could be something from, the 15th century in a 12th century movie or 12th century depiction. It could be like any number of things like that, and it's just like, it's good to see, it's refreshing that, he goes into this level of detail, which means that the other aspects of the story are going to be done properly. It's kind of reminds me, in a strange way, it kind of reminds me of Van Halen. Just bear with me, it makes sense. Eddie Van Halen, was it Eddie Van Halen or was it David Lee Roth? One of the people involved in Van Halen. Maybe it was the entire band did this. I don't remember. But the point is, whenever they go to a concert venue, they would always take, they would fill out a contract with the venue, and the venue would say, okay, we will provide this service and we will do this, da-da-da-da-da. And they would do this. And one of the stipulations is they would always have in the dressing room a bowl of brown M&Ms. And this seems like an absurd request, and it is an absurd request, and it was done that way deliberately. The point is that if they're not going to provide that bowl of brown M&Ms, if they can't handle the little things like that, they're not going to handle the big stuff. And they're going to get other stuff wrong. So if they can't do that, then that's when Van Halen knew, okay, we got a problem here. We got to look into this a bit more with dealing with these people. Well, it's kind of like that with Robert Eggers. He goes into such minute detail. I saw an interview with him talking about The Witch, where he went into extreme detail about like making sure that they had the Puritans had the right buttons, or that the the siding on their house, it was the right kind of wood that was used, and it was done and cut the same way. Not because he actually cares about those things, but because he cares about those things. If you can care about something if you care about the buttons that somebody's wearing, are they period accurate? You're going to get stuff like, how are werewolves depicted? How are the weaponry and equipment that, limited that we see here? What would a ritual actually look like? Best as we can reconstruct them. He's going to get the big stuff. So that's what I like. He's pretty much like the anti-Nolan, or the what's the guy's name? Ridley Scott. There you go. The anti-Ridley Scott, who's just like, yeah, whatever, throw it in there. Were you alive during the past? No. Oh, then stop talking. It's like, no. We know how things work to some extent. Let's utilize that to the best of our abilities. So this looks really good. I'm not a horror fan, not even remotely a horror fan. Big reason why I'm not a horror fan. Well, 3 reasons. First off, I've seen people like my main interest is military history. I've seen like actual people die pretty horribly. I don't want to decompress or relax by watching someone else, pretend to die. It's like, it just doesn't work for me for the most part. The other big reason is that most horror movies are based on people making absolutely stupid decisions. It's like, hey, let's split. There's a serial killer on the loose. Let's split up. It's like, no, don't do that. Let's go running through the woods on our own without telling him. No, you know what? You deserve to die. I can't feel bad for you. But the way, like this type of supernatural. But here's the question, though: is this going to be supernatural? See, I'm going off. My mind's going about 7 different directions at once here. It seems supernatural to an extent. Like you saw the witch flying, you saw a bunch of other things that might be supernatural. But I think it might be going with this person is not actually cursed. Like he's not going to transform into a wolf, but he thinks he's a wolf, and he goes around butchering people. Now, how they're going to justify that with like him butchering all these sheep and all that stuff, I don't know. I really don't. I mean, could a delusional person butcher a flock of sheep? I guess. I mean, maybe. I don't know. This is a lot of me making assumptions. Like, all I know about this is what I see here. I know no further context. I do know that Robert Eggers is going to have them speak in actual English dialogue, which is really cool. You heard that a little bit here. Thy kin are cursed. Even the accent, like we don't know what an actual accent during the Middle Ages sounded like, but one of the things though, the vowels tended to be lengthened out. So like instead of saying kin, they would say keen. Instead of saying cursed, you would say cursed. Thy kin are cursed. Like you would try to house was house, or it was actually hoose, but a longer vowel, which we seem to get here with the limited dialogue we have. And that's the attention to detail that I was talking about. And this looks pretty interesting. Am I going to see it? Maybe. I probably will, actually, because I haven't seen the last movie. The last movie I saw in theaters was The Northman. So, because everything else in Hollywood is pretty much slop nowadays, and I don't want to watch Marvel movies, and I don't care about the DCEU. Like I don't care that James Gunn's Superman, Supergirl is. I don't care, or I don't care about the remake of a childhood classic of mine. I just don't care. But this looks good. This looks good. I'm gonna have to wait for more details to come out. We'll see how it goes. Yeah. Oh, one other thing too that just popped in my head. One other thing that popped in my head is wolves were also associated with criminals, which may be what we're going here. Like maybe this guy's just a serial killer, right? Maybe this guy's honestly, just hear me out here, right? Maybe this guy is just a serial killer, and he thinks he's a wolf. Maybe that's part of it. But one of the issues is, or one of the things that that are interesting about this is that in medieval England, an outlaw was called a wolf's head. They were they were associated with wolves because that meant you can hunt them with impunity. The point of outlawry is not that you're a wanted criminal. It's not what an outlaw is. It means you were outside you committed a crime, you were stripped of legal status, you were outside of the protection of the law. That's what an outlaw is. And it meant that you, basically anybody could kill you at that point or steal from you, like basically do anything they want to you with impunity and absolutely nothing would happen to you or what happened to them. And they were called wolf's heads. And they were a pest. They were something to be dealt with. So maybe they're tapping into that angle here, possibly. I don't know. That's just a thought that just popped in my head. But anyway, yeah, this looks pretty good. And yeah, bereft of any further context or what's going on here, I can't really talk about it too much, but it looks good. I very eagerly await to see what, where he's going to be going next with this. And yeah, further information as it comes out. But yeah, this was pretty good. So anyway, that's just it for this complete off the rails and unscripted rambling video. Please hit the like and subscribe button. More videos will be coming out whenever I bother to get around to it. Have a good day. Or don't have a good day. You're adults. Have any kind of day you want. See you all later.